Well, it's fascinating that the court, this sort of structure for tariff courts, has now intervened and said these are illegal. You would have thought the Congress, which, tariffs are import taxes. Congress, particularly the House of Representatives, has a constitutional authority to generate revenue and to authorize spending. Only the House can initiate that. And so they do have jurisdiction over tariffs. And the president can suspend the rules, indefinitely if he so chooses. But the idea was that this is just for an emergency and that the power really rests with Congress. But the Republican dominated House and Senate has chosen to let the president extend this authority, literally chosen to do that. They could have revoked it earlier this year, but they didn't. So this is really fascinating that now the court that is part of the international trade and domestic trade system has said, no, these are illegal. Where is Congress?
What will the appeal process look like? Peter Navarro with us here in an hour and a half from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Professor Schiller, Navarro's going to be apoplectic over this. Who does the Trump administration appeal to? Who are those guys?
Well, that's the big question mark. I mean, this is sort of an embedded government structure. So, when you think about the final word, who has the final word, and the Trump administration is not that interested in, any other, structure in the American political system having power over them, does everything go to the Supreme Court? And the Supreme Court it'd be interesting to watch. We have a lot of decisions coming down in June that we can expect. And, where do they rein in executive power? And the important thing with the Supreme Court is to make sure this isn't about Donald Trump. This is about the balance of power in the system itself. So that's where the adjudication on tariffs lie. In immigration, we've seen the courts say to the president and Congress has authority to make the laws on immigration, make the laws. The president cannot just create immigration law. So is that the same thing that will be applied to tariffs? We're probably about to find out.
So, Wendy, what happens in the interim here? I mean, I feel like the United States is negotiating with dozens of countries over tariffs. What do I do if I don't know, China, Canada, Mexico? What do I do now with this ruling?
Well, I mean, you think about the other countries, you also think about small businesses.
Yeah.
Rhode Island is a state with a disproportionate amount of small business owners. How do they plan? Are you paying the tax or are you not paying the tax? And I call it a tax because it is a tax, a tariff. What do you do? Do you raise your prices now? How much do you order? What do we think about the economy? It creates and generates, of course, uncertainty. We saw the markets react badly to major tariffs. Then they come down.
Yep.
Now the market has settled, but now there's continued uncertainty. So if you're Navarro and you want to make the argument that businesses should invest in the United States, they need a stable, consistent business environment. And right now, the Trump administration is not providing a stable and consistent business environment.
How hard do you think the Trump administration will fight this court ruling and fight for its tariff mandates?
The instinct to fight comes straight from the top.
Yep.
Trump is a fighter and he doesn't like limits on his power. He could be talked into lowering them and he has been talked into lowering them. And so when you think about this, the president will fight for the sake of retaining executive power. And Congress has to send him a signal eventually, but they aren't acting on that. Again, we look at this tax bill. Once it's out of the way, what does Congress do to assert itself? I don't have great expectations for Congress to assert itself once this tax bill is done. I think the Republicans realize that's about the only thing they're going to get done this year.